Scott Mitchell saw his ex-wife crying outside a grocery store on Christmas Eve. His 5-year-old daughter said 2 words that changed everything. "Daddy, she's crying." Those words shattered 3 years of silence. 3 years of pretending Anna Turner didn't exist. 3 years of trying to forget the woman who'd walked away from their family and never looked back, until now. If you want to know how a single dad and his daughter saved Christmas by forgiving the unforgivable, hit that subscribe button. This story will break your heart and put it back together. Scott Mitchell was 35 years old and had been a single father for 3 years. 3 long, exhausting, beautiful years of raising his daughter Emma completely alone. Ever since that devastating day when Anna Turner, his wife of 7 years, packed 2 suitcases and left without explanation. No fight, no build-up, no warning signs that Scott had recognized. Just a note on the kitchen counter written in Anna's careful handwriting that said, "I can't do this anymore. I'm sorry." 8 words that shattered his entire world. She'd left behind their 2-year-old daughter, Emma. Left behind the house they'd scrimped and saved to buy together, the one with the backyard Emma learned to walk in. Left behind the life they'd built brick by careful brick over 7 years of marriage. Left behind photo albums and wedding rings and dreams of growing old together. Scott had come home from a 48-hour shift at the fire station, exhausted and looking forward to kissing his wife and daughter, and found Emma screaming in her crib. She'd been alone for hours. Her diaper was soaked. She was red-faced from crying, her small voice hoarse. Anna's closet was half empty, her toiletries gone from the bathroom, her car missing from the driveway. Scott had called in a panic, fingers fumbling with his phone while he changed Emma and tried to calm her down. Anna's phone went straight to voicemail. He called 10 times. 20. The mailbox was full. Then the number was disconnected entirely. He'd driven to her sister Christine's house in the suburbs, Emma strapped crying in her car seat. Christine had opened the door looking guilty and sad, but refused to say where Anna was. Said she didn't know. Said Anna had made her choices, and Scott needed to respect them. Scott had stood on that doorstep, begging for information, while his daughter screamed in the car, and Christine cried but wouldn't budge. Her mother, Patricia, was next. The woman who'd never liked Scott, never thought he was good enough for her daughter. She'd looked at him with something almost like pity and said Anna needed space, needed time, that Scott should give her that. Scott had argued until he was hoarse. Patricia had closed the door in his face. Her best friend Morgan from college. Same story. Nobody would tell him where she was. Or maybe they genuinely didn't know. Maybe Anna had cut everyone off. Maybe she'd vanished so completely that even the people who loved her couldn't find her. Anna Turner had disappeared like she'd never existed. Like their 7 years together had been a dream. Like the daughter they'd created together meant nothing. The divorce papers arrived 6 months later via certified mail. The envelope sat on Scott's kitchen table for 3 days before he could bring himself to open it. When he finally did, he discovered Anna wanted nothing. No custody battles, no alimony, no split of assets. She'd checked the box that said she relinquished all parental rights, forever, permanently, legally erasing herself from Emma's life. The lawyer's return address was in Seattle, 800 miles away. Scott had stared at that address for hours, debating whether to drive there, to show up and demand answers, to make Anna look him in the eye and explain why. But what would that accomplish? She'd made her choice. Emma needed stability, not a father chasing ghosts across state lines. Scott signed the papers in a fog of grief and rage and confusion, sent them back, got the final decree 2 months later. He was officially a single father. Anna was officially gone. Their marriage was officially over. He raised Emma alone. Learned everything he'd let Anna handle when she was around. Figured out pigtails through YouTube tutorials, his large firefighter hands clumsy with the tiny elastics. Mastered painting tiny fingernails without getting polish everywhere, though Emma's cuticles were always a mess. Learned which bedtime stories Emma liked and which ones made her cry. Negotiated picky eating phases and potty training setbacks, and the million small challenges of raising a toddler alone. His fire station brothers became his support system. They covered shifts when Emma was sick, brought casseroles when Scott was too exhausted to cook, taught him how to French braid hair before Emma's first ballet recital. They never asked about Anna, never made Scott explain why his wife had left, just showed up and helped without judgment. Emma adapted better than Scott expected. She was so young when Anna left that the memories faded fast. By age 3, she'd stopped asking where Mommy was. By age 4, she seemed to forget she'd ever had a mother. When kids at daycare talked about their mums, Emma talked about her dad. It was just the two of them. That was normal. Scott kept a few photos of Anna tucked away in a box in the garage. Pictures from their wedding. Anna pregnant and glowing. Anna holding newborn Emma with tears of joy on her face. He didn't display them, couldn't bear to look at them, but he couldn't throw them away either. Someday Emma might want to know what her mother looked like, might want proof that Anna had existed, had loved her at least once. He built a life around his daughter that was full and good and whole. Emma was happy, thriving in kindergarten. She had friends and hobbies and a dad who would do anything for her. She didn't remember her mother. Didn't ask about the woman who'd disappeared. Didn't seem to feel like anything was missing. Scott told himself he'd moved on, that he didn't think about Anna anymore, that the anger had faded into indifference over 3 years of single parenthood and moving forward. He dated occasionally when his shift schedule and Emma's bedtime allowed. Coffee dates that went nowhere. Dinners that felt forced. Nothing serious. Nobody who met Emma. Nobody who made him feel like taking the risk of letting someone into their carefully constructed world. He was content with his small, safe life, or at least that's what he told himself. Right up until Christmas Eve, when he saw Anna crying on a bench and his carefully maintained equilibrium shattered into a million pieces. Until Christmas Eve, when he saw her standing outside the grocery store in the snow, crying like her heart was breaking. Scott and Emma had been shopping for Christmas dinner at the big grocery store on Main Street. It was their tradition, just the two of them. They'd walk the aisles together on Christmas Eve afternoon, Emma riding in the cart, pointing at things she wanted, Scott pretending to consider her suggestions of cookies for dinner before loading up on turkey and stuffing and all the ingredients for the pumpkin pie Emma insisted on helping make every year. This year Emma was 5 and too big for the cart, so she walked beside him holding his hand, chattering non-stop about everything and nothing, about Santa and reindeer and whether they'd left enough carrots out last year, about how her friend Zoe said Santa wasn't real, but Emma knew that was wrong because how else did presents appear, about how she hoped for the Barbie dream house, but would be happy with anything because Santa knew best. Scott was only half listening, mentally calculating cooking times and whether he'd remembered to buy whipped cream for the pie. Emma didn't like the stuff from a can, insisted on real whipped cream that Scott had to whip himself, which took forever and never came out quite right. But Emma loved it, so he'd do it. The store was packed with last-minute shoppers, stressed parents grabbing forgotten ingredients, elderly couples moving slowly through the aisles, teenagers buying snacks for Christmas Eve parties. The whole store hummed with that frantic energy of people trying to make Christmas perfect. Scott and Emma made it through the chaos, checked out with 2 full bags of groceries and Emma carrying the pie pumpkin because she insisted. They walked out of the warm store into the December cold, their breath visible in clouds. Snow was falling softly, The kind of perfect Christmas snow that looked like it came from a movie. Not too heavy, just enough to dust everything in white and make the world feel magical. Christmas lights twinkled on every storefront window. Salvation Army bell ringers stood on corners calling out cheery hellos. Music played from speakers mounted on lampposts. The whole world felt wrapped in holiday magic, exactly the way Christmas Eve should feel. Emma was spinning in circles, trying to catch snowflakes on her tongue. Scott was juggling grocery bags and making sure she didn't wander into the parking lot. The pumpkin was tucked under Emma's arm, and she was singing Jingle Bells off-key at the top of her lungs. And there, sitting on a bench just outside the store entrance with her face buried in her hands, was Anna Turner. For a moment, Scott's brain refused to process what he was seeing. It couldn't be her. Anna was in Seattle, 800 miles away. Had been for 3 years. She wouldn't just show up here. Wouldn't be sitting on a bench outside the grocery store where they used to shop together, where Scott still shopped every week, seeing her ghost in every aisle. But it was her, thinner than he remembered, her dark hair longer and streaked with grey she'd never had before. Wearing a threadbare coat that looked like it came from a thrift store instead of the nice wool one he'd bought her for their 5th anniversary. But unmistakably, undeniably, Anna. Scott stopped so abruptly that Emma crashed into his legs. For a moment he thought he was imagining it, some Christmas ghost conjured by stress and nostalgia. But no, it was her, thinner than he remembered. Her dark hair longer, streaked with grey she'd never had before, wearing a threadbare coat that looked like it came from a thrift store, but unmistakably Anna. She was sobbing, not crying quietly, full, wrenching sobs that shook her whole body. People walked past her without stopping. It was Christmas Eve. Everyone was busy. Nobody had time for a stranger's breakdown. Scott's first instinct was to turn around, walk the other direction, pretend he hadn't seen her. She'd walked away from them. She didn't get to reappear in their lives now, but Emma tugged his hand. "Daddy, that lady is sad." "Yeah, baby. Some people get sad during the holidays." "Why is she crying?" "I don't know, Emma." Emma stared at the crying woman with the intense focus 5-year-olds bring to everything. Then she said the words that would change all of their lives. "Daddy, she's crying." It wasn't a question. It was a statement of fact, an observation that demanded action. Because in Emma's world, when someone cried, you helped them. That's what Daddy did when she fell down. That's what her teacher did when kids were upset. Crying meant someone needed help. Scott looked at his daughter, at her big brown eyes full of concern for a stranger, at the compassion he'd somehow managed to teach her despite everything, and he realized he couldn't walk away. Not with Emma watching, not when his daughter believed that helping people was what you did. "Stay here with the cart," Scott said quietly. "I'll go check on her." He approached the bench slowly. Anna didn't look up, didn't notice him. She was lost in whatever private hell had brought her to this moment. "Anna." His voice came out rougher than he intended, louder. Several passing shoppers turned to look. Her head snapped up. For a second, she didn't seem to recognize him. Her eyes were unfocused, red and swollen from crying. Then recognition dawned and her face went through about 6 different emotions in 3 seconds. Surprise, shock, fear, shame, more fear, pure terror. She stood up so fast she nearly fell, stumbling over her own feet, backed away from him like he was going to hurt her, her hands coming up defensively. "Scott, I didn't know you still lived here. I thought maybe you'd moved. The divorce lawyer said, I wasn't trying to. I didn't mean to." The words tumbled out incoherently. She was shaking, actually trembling in that thin coat that wasn't nearly warm enough for December. "What are you doing here?" Scott's voice was flat, carefully neutral. He couldn't let himself feel anything right now, couldn't process this. Not with Emma standing 3 feet away. "I was just—" Anna looked around desperately, like she was searching for an escape route, like a trapped animal. "I needed groceries. I'm staying with— I have a friend nearby, temporarily. I didn't think I'd run into you. I didn't think— This was a mistake. I shouldn't have come back. I'm sorry. I'll leave. I'll leave right now." She started to walk away, moving fast despite the obvious exhaustion in her movements. Scott should have let her go, should have returned to Emma and their groceries and their uncomplicated life, should have protected his daughter from this woman who'd abandoned her. But something in Anna's face stopped him, not just sadness, deeper than that. Desperation, raw fear, the look of someone who'd hit rock bottom and was still falling, the look of someone barely holding on. And beneath his anger and shock, Scott was still a firefighter, still someone trained to run toward people in crisis, not away from them. "Anna, wait!" She stopped but didn't turn around, just stood there in the falling snow with her shoulders hunched, waiting for whatever he was going to say, bracing herself for it. "Are you okay?" The question hung in the cold air. Scott didn't even know why he'd asked it. 3 years of silence and abandonment and unanswered questions, and that's what came out. "Are you okay?" Anna laughed. It was the saddest, most broken sound Scott had ever heard. Like something inside her had cracked and this awful noise was leaking out. "No, I'm not okay. I haven't been okay for 3 years. I haven't been okay since I made the worst mistake of my life and walked away from everything that mattered. But that's not your problem anymore. That's not your responsibility. I made my choices." She still wasn't looking at him, kept her back turned like she couldn't bear to face him. "What happened to you?" Scott asked, because the Anna he'd been married to wouldn't be crying on benches in thrift store coats, wouldn't be running from him like she was terrified. Something had gone very, very wrong. "Everything. Nothing. Does it matter?" Anna finally turned to face him. Her eyes were red and swollen from what looked like hours of crying. Her face was gaunt, cheekbones sharp in a way they'd never been before. She looked exhausted beyond measure, defeated in a way that went bone deep. "I made my choices. I left. I destroyed everything good in my life. I hurt the 2 people I loved most in the world. And now I'm paying for it. That's how this works, right? Actions have consequences. I'm living mine." "Anna, I'm sorry." The words came out as a whisper. "I'm so sorry. For leaving, for not explaining, for being too broken to stay, for all of it. I know sorry doesn't fix anything. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. But I needed you to know that I'm sorry. That I've been sorry every single day for 3 years. Her voice cracked on the last words. Fresh tears started streaming down her face. Scott wanted to be angry, wanted to yell at her for abandoning Emma, for the 3 years of single parenthood, for all the questions he couldn't answer. But looking at her now, broken and lost, he just felt tired. "Are you in trouble?" "I'm always in trouble." Anna wiped her eyes. "I'm sorry. You shouldn't have to deal with this. I'll leave town. You won't see me again." "Daddy!" Emma's small voice cut through the tension like a knife. She'd left the grocery cart where Scott had told her to wait and walked over, completely ignoring his instruction to stay put. Her little boots crunched in the fresh snow. The pumpkin was still tucked under her arm. "Is the crying lady okay?" Anna's face went absolutely white. All the blood drained out of it. She stared at Emma like she was seeing a ghost, like she was hallucinating. Her lips moved, but no sound came out at first. "Emma?" The word was barely a whisper. Anna's hands were shaking. She took a stumbling step forward, then caught herself, looked at Scott with panic in her eyes, silently asking permission or maybe forgiveness for even speaking their daughter's name. Emma tilted her head, studying Anna with the intense curiosity 5-year-olds bring to everything. "Do I know you? You said my name. Do we know each other?" Anna's voice broke completely. She pressed a hand to her mouth, trying to hold back sobs. "No, you don't know me. We don't. You were too little. You wouldn't remember." "Remember what?" Scott should have intervened, should have pulled Emma away, protected her from this conversation that was going to complicate everything. But he found himself frozen, watching his ex-wife see their daughter for the first time in 3 years. "Why are you crying?" Emma asked. Direct, matter of fact, the way kids asked questions without any of the social filters adults developed. "I'm just sad, sweetheart." Anna wiped her eyes, but fresh tears kept coming. "Very, very sad." "Why? Did something bad happen?" "Yes, something very bad, but it was my own fault. I made a mistake, and now I'm sad about it." "What mistake?" "Emma," Scott said gently, finally finding his voice. "Let's give the lady some space. She needs—" But Emma, with the fearless compassion of childhood and absolutely no concept of boundaries, stepped closer to Anna, reached out and patted her arm. "When I'm sad, my daddy gives me hugs. Hugs make everything better. Do you need a hug?" Anna made a sound like she'd been punched, looked at Scott with tears streaming down her face. "She's so kind. You raised her to be so kind." "Emma's a good kid," Scott said roughly. His throat felt tight. "Can I hug her?" Anna asked, her voice breaking. "Please. I know I don't have the right to ask. I know I don't deserve it. But please." Scott wanted to say no, wanted to protect Emma from this woman who'd walked away. But looking at his daughter's concerned little face, at the way she was already reaching for Anna, he couldn't do it. "It's Emma's choice." Emma looked up at Scott, checking that it was really okay. He nodded, and then his 5-year-old daughter wrapped her small arms around a crying stranger who was actually her mother. Anna made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. Tears streamed down her face. "Oh, baby, you're so kind, but I don't deserve hugs." "Everyone deserves hugs when they're sad," Emma said with absolute certainty. Then, before Scott could stop her, Emma wrapped her small arms around Anna's waist. Anna froze. For a long moment, she just stood there while her daughter, the child she'd abandoned 3 years ago, hugged her with complete trust and innocent affection. Anna's arms hung at her sides. She looked terrified to move, like she might break the moment or wake up from a dream. Then, slowly, carefully, like she was handling something infinitely precious and fragile, Anna put her arms around Emma and broke down completely. Not quiet crying, full body-shaking sobs. The kind of crying that came from somewhere deep and wounded. 3 years of grief and guilt and loss pouring out all at once. Her whole body trembled as she held Emma, this little girl who didn't even remember her but was showing her kindness anyway. Emma just kept hugging her, patting Anna's back the way Scott did when Emma had nightmares. "It's okay. Don't cry. It's okay." "I'm sorry," Anna sobbed. "I'm so sorry, baby. I'm so sorry." Emma pulled back, confused. "Sorry for what?" Anna looked at Scott helplessly. Her face was destroyed with tears. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Scott watched his ex-wife cry while holding their daughter and felt something crack open in his chest. Something he'd been holding tight for 3 years. All the anger, all the hurt, all the carefully maintained emotional distance, all the walls he'd built to protect himself from this exact situation. It all shattered in the face of Emma's simple kindness and Anna's obvious anguish. This was the woman he'd loved enough to marry. The woman he'd built a life with, the woman who'd disappeared and left him drowning. And now she was here, clearly suffering, clearly broken, and his daughter, their daughter, was showing her more grace than Scott had in 3 years. "Come on," he heard himself say. The words came out before he could think them through, before he could talk himself out of it. "It's Christmas Eve. You shouldn't be alone." Anna pulled back from Emma, shaking her head violently. "Scott, no. You don't want me around. You can't want that. I left you. I left Emma. I walked away from everything. I don't get to just show up and—" "I'm not doing this for you," Scott interrupted. His voice was rougher than he intended. "I'm doing it because my daughter just saw someone in pain and helped them without hesitation, and I'm not going to teach her that compassion has limits, that kindness only counts when it's convenient, that some people don't deserve help." He picked up Emma, settled her on his hip. She wrapped her arms around his neck, the pumpkin still somehow clutched under one arm. "We're going home to make dinner. You can come or not. Your choice." Scott started walking toward the cart, toward his truck, toward the decision he knew he was going to regret, but couldn't seem to stop himself from making. "We're in the same house. Green one on Maple Street. Dinner's at 6. Anna pulled back from Emma, shaking her head. "Scott, no. You don't want me around. I left you. I left Emma. I don't get to just show up and— I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it because my daughter just saw someone in pain and helped them, and I'm not going to teach her that compassion has limits." Scott picked up Emma, settled her on his hip. "We're going home to make dinner. You can come or not. Your choice." Anna stared at him. "Why would you do this?" "I don't know. Maybe because it's Christmas. Maybe because Emma's watching. Maybe because I need to understand why you left. Or maybe I'm just an idiot." Scott started walking toward the cart. "We're in the same house. Green one on Maple Street. Dinner's at 6. He loaded Emma and the groceries into his truck and drove away. Didn't look back to see if Anna was still standing there. Didn't let himself think too hard about what he'd just done. Just focused on getting Emma home and starting the turkey. Emma was quiet on the drive. Then, "Daddy, who was that lady?" Scott's hands tightened on the steering wheel. He'd known this question would come eventually, had rehearsed answers in his head, but he'd never expected it like this. "That was someone I used to know, someone who's having a hard time." She seemed really sad. "Yeah, baby, she did." "Is she coming to dinner?" "Maybe. I don't know." "I hope she does. Nobody should be alone on Christmas." Scott looked at his daughter in the rearview mirror, 5 years old and wiser than he'd ever be. "You're right, Emma. Nobody should." They got home and Scott started cooking on autopilot. Turkey in the oven, potatoes peeled. Emma helped with the pie crust, getting flour everywhere and chattering about what Santa was going to bring. Scott smiled and responded appropriately while his mind spun. What had he done? Inviting Anna to dinner. She'd walked out on them, signed away her rights as a mother, disappeared for 3 years without a word. And now he'd just invited her into their home because Emma had shown her kindness. But he'd seen something in Anna's face, something beyond the tears, a brokenness that scared him. And whatever she'd done, whatever her reasons for leaving, she was clearly suffering. Did that mean she deserved forgiveness? Scott didn't know, but he knew his daughter had just taught him something about compassion that he'd forgotten. At 5:30, the doorbell rang. Emma jumped up from the couch where she'd been watching Christmas movies. "I'll get it." Scott caught her before she reached the door. "Let me check first, baby." He opened the door. Anna stood on the porch looking terrified. She'd changed clothes, still old and worn but clean. Her hair was brushed. Makeup covered some of the exhaustion in her face. "I almost didn't come," she said quietly. "I sat in my car for 20 minutes trying to decide if showing up would be the cruelest thing I could do to both of you." "But you came anyway." "I couldn't stay away. 3 years of staying away and I couldn't do it anymore. Not on Christmas. Anna looked past him to where Emma was peeking around his legs. I'm sorry. I know I don't have the right to be here. You're here now. Come in before you freeze. Anna stepped inside. Emma immediately took her hand. Do you like Christmas movies? We're watching Rudolph. Yes, I like Christmas movies. Good. You can sit with me. Emma dragged Anna to the couch with the complete absence of social boundaries that came with being 5. Anna sat down stiffly, looking like she might bolt at any second. Emma climbed up next to her and started explaining the entire plot of Rudolph, despite the fact they were 40 minutes into the movie. Scott watched from the kitchen while he basted the turkey. Anna was crying again, quiet tears streaming down her face while Emma talked and pointed at the TV. She kept looking at Emma like she couldn't quite believe she was real. Dinner was surreal. They sat at the table Scott had set for 2. He added a third-place setting at the last minute. Emma chattered endlessly about kindergarten and her best friend Zoe and how she wanted a puppy, but Daddy said puppies were a lot of work. Anna listened to every word like she was memorizing it, asked questions, laughed at Emma's jokes, cried when Emma mentioned the tooth she'd lost last month. Scott barely spoke, just watched his daughter interact with her mother, a mother Emma didn't even know was her mother. It was painful and beautiful and completely wrong, and somehow right, all at once. After dinner, Emma insisted Anna help with the pie. They crowled pumpkin filling and whipped cream. Emma got more whipped cream on Anna than in the pie. Anna laughed, really laughed, for the first time all evening. The sound made Scott's chest ache. At 8 o'clock, Scott told Emma it was bedtime. Emma protested until Anna promised to tuck her in. They went through the bedtime routine, pajamas, teeth brushing. Emma picked out 3 books, and Anna read all of them without complaint, doing different voices for the characters. Emma giggled and snuggled closer. By the 3rd book, she was falling asleep. Anna kissed Emma's forehead, soft and gentle and heartbroken. Sweet dreams, beautiful girl. Will you be here in the morning? Emma mumbled, already half asleep. I don't know, sweetheart. I hope so. You're nice. I like you. Anna's face crumpled, but she held it together until she and Scott were out of the room. Then she collapsed against the hallway wall and sobbed silently, her hand over her mouth. Scott should have stayed detached, should have maintained boundaries. Instead, he pulled Anna into the living room and sat her down on the couch. Tell me why you left. Scott, you owe me that much. 3 years of silence. You owe me the truth. Anna wrapped her arms around herself. I had postpartum depression. Severe. After Emma was born, I couldn't function, couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. I had thoughts about hurting her, about hurting myself. Horrible, dark thoughts that terrified me. Scott's stomach dropped. Why didn't you tell me? I tried. You were so happy, so excited about being a dad, and I was falling apart. I thought I was broken. Thought Emma deserved better than a mother who couldn't even hold her without panicking. Anna's voice was shaking. I went to a doctor, got medication. It helped, but not enough. The thoughts got worse. I became convinced Emma would be better off without me, that I'd hurt her if I stayed. So I left. You should have told me. We could have gotten you help, real help. I was ashamed. I felt like a failure. What kind of mother abandons her baby? Anna looked at him with devastated eyes. I thought leaving was protecting her. I didn't realize I was destroying all of us. Where have you been? Seattle, working as a waitress, living in a terrible apartment, going to therapy twice a week and taking medication that helps most days. Anna wiped her eyes. I wanted to come back so many times, wanted to see Emma, but I'd signed away my rights, thought it was better for her to have no mother than a broken one. Why come back now? The question hung between them. Anna was silent for a long moment, staring at her hands. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "Because I'm dying." The words hung in the air like a bomb, like a grenade with the pin pulled. Scott felt them hit him physically, like a punch to the gut. What? Ovarian cancer, stage 4, metastatic. The doctors gave me 6 months. That was 3 months ago. Anna's laugh was bitter, broken. So I've got maybe 3 months left if I'm lucky, less if I'm not. Could be weeks, could be days. The cancer's aggressive and I can't afford treatment, no insurance, can barely afford the pain medication. Scott couldn't breathe, couldn't process what he was hearing. Anna was dying. His ex-wife, Emma's mother, was dying. "I didn't mean to run into you tonight," Anna continued, tears streaming down her face. "Wasn't planning to make contact. I drove here 2 weeks ago. I've been staying in a motel on the edge of town, the cheap one by the highway. Been watching Emma sometimes, from a distance, outside her school, at the park, just seeing her, making sure she was okay." "You've been watching our daughter?" Scott's voice came out sharper than he intended. "I know how that sounds. I know it's wrong, but I was dying, and I just needed to see her. See that she was happy and healthy and loved. See that you'd given her a good life." Anna wrapped her arms around herself. "I wasn't going to approach you, wasn't going to disrupt your lives. I was just going to watch from far away, and then when I got too sick, I was going to go back to Seattle and die quietly in hospice without either of you ever knowing I'd been here. But tonight I was sitting on that bench outside the grocery store trying to work up the courage to go inside. I'd been sitting there for an hour, and I just broke down. 3 years of holding it together, and I broke down in public on Christmas Eve. And then Emma saw me, and you were kind, and I'm so sorry." Anna stood up abruptly. "I shouldn't have come inside, shouldn't have eaten dinner with you, shouldn't have read Emma's stories, shouldn't have let myself hope for even a second that maybe there was a chance you'd— I don't know what I was thinking." "Stop." Scott stood too. "You're dying." "Yes. And Emma doesn't know you're her mother." "No, and she shouldn't. It would just confuse her, hurt her. I'll leave and you can forget this happened." "No." Anna looked at him, confused. "No. Emma deserves to know her mother, even if it's only for a little while, even if it's going to hurt. She deserves that chance, and so do you." "Scott, I left you, abandoned Emma. I don't deserve—" "None of us deserve anything. But life happens anyway. You're sick, you're dying. And my daughter just spent the evening with her mother and was happier than I've seen her in weeks." Scott ran his hands through his hair. "I don't forgive you, not yet, maybe not ever. But Emma deserves to know you, and you deserve to know her." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying you stay for Christmas, for however long you have left. We tell Emma the truth. Let her make memories with her mum. Let you have whatever time you have left with your daughter." Anna started crying again. "Why would you do this, after everything I did?" "Because Emma said, 'Daddy,' she's crying, and reminded me that compassion matters more than pride. Because you're sick and alone and nobody should die that way. And because despite everything, I once loved you enough to marry you and make a child with you. That has to count for something." Anna collapsed into his arms. Scott held her while she cried. It didn't fix anything, didn't erase the 3 years of pain, didn't change the fact she was dying. But it was something, a start, a crack in the wall he'd built around his heart. They sat up all night talking. Anna told him everything, the depths of her depression, the therapy that slowly helped, the cancer diagnosis 6 months ago, the refusal of aggressive treatment because she had no insurance and no money and was too tired to fight. Scott told her about raising Emma, The first steps and first words. Kindergarten graduation. The way Emma asked about her mother sometimes, and he never knew what to say. By the time the sun started rising on Christmas morning, they'd cried out, talked out, exhausted, but somehow lighter. "I'll tell Emma today," Anna said. "She deserves to know the truth." "We'll tell her together." Emma woke up at 6 a.m., as children do on Christmas. She ran downstairs and stopped short when she saw Anna on the couch. "You stayed!" Emma's face lit up like the Christmas tree. "I stayed," Anna said softly. "Emma, sweetheart, I need to talk to you about something important." Emma climbed up on the couch between Anna and Scott. "Okay." Scott took a deep breath. "Emma, remember how you've asked about your mommy before? You said she had to go away." "That's right. Well, this is her. This is your mom." Emma looked at Anna, then at Scott, then back at Anna, her small face scrunched in confusion. "This is my mommy?" "Yes," Anna whispered. "I'm your mommy, and I'm so sorry I went away. I was sick and thought it was the right thing to do, but I was wrong, and I've missed you every single day." Emma processed this with the seriousness of a child trying to understand adult concepts. "Are you still sick?" "Yes, baby. I'm still sick." "Will you get better?" Anna's voice cracked. "No, sweetheart, I won't get better. But I'm here now, and if it's okay with you and your dad, I'd like to spend time with you, to be your mom for as long as I can." Emma looked at Scott. "Is it okay?" "It's okay, Emma, if you want her to stay." Emma turned back to Anna, studied her face with those big brown eyes that saw everything. Then she climbed into Anna's lap and hugged her. "I want you to stay. I always wanted a mommy." Anna held her daughter and cried. Scott put his arm around both of them, and there, on Christmas morning, their broken families started to heal. Anna stayed. After that Christmas Eve conversation that changed everything, she moved into the guest room, the small bedroom at the end of the hall that Scott had been using for storage. They spent Christmas Day cleaning it out together while Emma played with her new toys in the living room. Moving boxes to the garage, setting up the old bed frame Scott had been meaning to donate. Anna insisted on helping despite being exhausted, despite the pain Scott could see etched in every movement. The day after Christmas, Scott took Anna to the local hospital, used his firefighter insurance to get her seen by an oncologist. The doctor confirmed what Anna already knew. Stage 4 ovarian cancer, metastatic. But there were treatment options. Palliative chemotherapy that wouldn't cure her but might give her more time. Radiation for pain management. Clinical trials she could try. Scott helped pay for all of it, used his savings, took out a loan. His fire station brothers organized fundraisers without being asked. Anna cried when she found out, overwhelmed by the kindness of people who didn't even know her. The treatment didn't cure her. The cancer was too advanced for that. But it bought time. Precious, irreplaceable time. 5 months instead of 3. Maybe 6 if they were lucky. Every day was a gift they knew wouldn't last. Anna took Emma to school every morning, would wake up early despite the exhaustion and nausea from chemo, would make Emma breakfast and pack her lunch, and walk her to the bus stop holding her hand. The other parents would wave. Emma would introduce Anna as her mom, and Anna would cry quiet tears of gratitude that Emma wanted to claim her. She picked Emma up every afternoon, would be waiting at the bus stop early, afraid of missing a single moment. Emma would run off the bus and into Anna's arms, and they'd walk home together talking about the day, about what Emma learned, about her friends, about the 1,000 small details of a 5-year-old's life that Anna had missed for 3 years and was desperately trying to make up for. She helped with homework at the kitchen table, struggled through kindergarten math that should have been easy but wasn't, because the chemo made her foggy. Emma was patient, would explain things to her mum the way her teacher explained things to her, would pat Anna's hand when she got frustrated and say, "It's okay, Mommy, we'll figure it out together." Anna made dinner most nights. Simple things, pasta, grilled cheese, things she could manage even on bad days. Scott would come home from the fire station and find them in the kitchen together, Emma on a stool helping stir, flour everywhere, both of them laughing. The house smelled like home again for the first time in 3 years. She read bedtime stories every single night without exception, no matter how sick she felt, no matter how much the chemo took out of her. She would curl up in Emma's bed with their daughter tucked against her side and read until Emma fell asleep. Sometimes Emma would ask Anna to tell her stories from when she was a baby instead of reading books. Anna would tell the same stories over and over, and Emma never got tired of hearing them. She and Scott were awkward at first. Too much history, too much hurt, too many years of silence and abandonment between them. They moved around each other carefully in the house, overly polite, avoiding touch, speaking in stilted sentences. But slowly, over weeks and then months, they found a rhythm, found a way to coexist. Not romantic, not the marriage they'd had, but something new, something neither of them had words for. A partnership built on their shared love for Emma and the shared knowledge that time was running out and they couldn't waste it on old grudges. They'd sit up after Emma went to bed, not planning to. It just happened. Scott would come downstairs after his shower to find Anna on the couch, too wired from the day to sleep despite her exhaustion. He'd sit down with the intention of keeping her company for a few minutes. Hours would pass. Anna would tell Scott about her day with Emma. The funny things Emma said, like how she'd announced to her kindergarten class that her mommy used to be lost, but now was found. The questions she asked, like whether everyone's mommies left and came back, or just hers. The ways she was growing and changing, how she could write her name now, how she'd made a new friend named Sophie, how she loved math but hated having her hair brushed. Scott would share stories from when Emma was little, filling in the 3 years Anna had missed. Emma's first steps, taken in their backyard on a Saturday morning when Scott had been watching her chase a butterfly. Her first word, which had been Dada, and made Scott cry. The time she'd gotten into the kitchen cupboard and dumped flour everywhere. The nightmare phase when she was 3. The way she'd asked about her mommy at age 4, and Scott had fumbled through an explanation that satisfied her then, but haunted him after. They cried together. Anna would weep, hearing about the milestones she'd missed. Scott would cry, remembering how hard those early years had been, raising Emma alone. They grieved what was lost. 3 years they could never get back. Time Anna had stolen from all of them when she left. But they also laughed together, at Emma's antics, at shared memories from their marriage, at the absurdity of their situation, divorced, living together, co-parenting while one of them was dying. Anna's dark humor about death would make Scott uncomfortable until he realized laughing was better than the alternative. They celebrated what remained. Every day Emma was happy. Every moment Anna got with her daughter. Every morning Anna woke up still alive. Every evening they made it through together. Small victories that felt enormous when you knew time was finite. Sometimes, late at night, when defenses were down, they'd talk about the marriage, about what went wrong, about whether they could have saved it if Anna had spoken up about her depression, about whether Scott should have noticed, about regrets and what-ifs and all the impossible questions that had no answers. "Do you hate me?" Anna asked one night in March, 3 months after she'd moved in. Scott thought about it, really thought about it. "No, I did for a while, but I don't anymore. I don't forgive you completely either. But hate? No. You're the mother of my child. You're sick. You're trying. That counts for something." "I hate myself enough for both of us," Anna said quietly. "Then stop." Emma needs you present, not drowning in guilt. Use the time you have left. It became a refrain. Use the time. Don't waste it. Anna repeated it like a mantra on hard days when the chemo made her sick and she wanted to stay in bed. Use the time. Get up. See Emma. Make memories. Live what's left. Emma thrived in ways Scott had never seen. She had a mother who adored her, who braided her hair in intricate styles learned from YouTube tutorials, who took her to the park even on bad days and pushed her on swings until her arms ached, who taught her to bake cookies and make friendship bracelets and paint her nails in glittery polish. Anna gave Emma every ounce of love she had, made memories deliberately, intentionally, took photos constantly. Her phone was full of pictures of Emma, Emma laughing, Emma serious, Emma asleep, Emma eating breakfast. Thousands of photos documenting every expression, every outfit, every moment. She recorded videos of herself reading Emma's favorite stories, set up her phone on a tripod in Emma's room and read every book on Emma's shelf. Her voice getting weaker as the months went on, but determined to leave Emma something. So Emma could hear her mother's voice reading Good Night Moon and Where the Wild Things Are, even after Anna was gone. She wrote letters, dozens of them, for Emma to open on future birthdays, for Emma's first day of middle school, for Emma's high school graduation, for Emma's wedding day, for the birth of Emma's first child. Sealed envelopes with Anna's handwriting, each one containing advice and love and everything Anna wouldn't be alive to say in person. She made a recipe book of all Emma's favorite foods, wrote down exactly how Emma liked her grilled cheese, diagonal cut, crusts on, the specific brand of mac and cheese Emma preferred, how to make pancakes the way Anna made them, slightly crispy on the edges. A whole notebook of instructions, so Emma would always have her mother's cooking, even when her mother was gone. She tried to pack a lifetime of mothering into the handful of months she had left. Every morning was precious, every afternoon sacred, every bedtime story a gift. She mothered with the intensity of someone who knew every moment was borrowed time. And Emma bloomed under that attention, became more confident, more affectionate, more willing to try new things. Having a mother changed her in ways Scott hadn't anticipated. She walked taller, smiled brighter, talked about Mommy constantly at school until her teachers called Scott to make sure he knew Anna was back in the picture, and it was okay. It was more than okay. It was everything. In April, for Emma's 6th birthday, they threw a party at the house. Anna was weak by then. The chemo was barely working, but she insisted on baking Emma's birthday cake from scratch. Chocolate with pink frosting, Emma's favorite. Anna's hands shook decorating it. Scott had to help her, but Emma's face when she saw it made every bit of effort worth it. They invited Emma's kindergarten class, 15 kids running around the backyard. Anna sat in a chair watching, too tired to play but smiling the whole time. Emma kept running over to show her things. Look at this, Mommy. Watch me, Mommy. Mommy, did you see? And Anna saw. Anna watched. Anna cheered. Anna was present in a way that made Scott's chest ache because he knew these moments were finite. Knew this might be Emma's only birthday with her mother. Knew Anna was using every last bit of strength to be here for this day. After the party, after the kids left, and Emma was in bed exhausted and happy, Anna collapsed. Just broke down crying from exhaustion and pain, and the knowledge that she probably wouldn't make it to another birthday. Scott held her on the couch. Didn't say it would be okay because it wouldn't. Just held her while she cried and grieved the future she wouldn't see. All the birthdays and Christmases and first days of school and graduations she'd miss. All the moments she'd worked so hard to be present for these few months, but wouldn't be there for long term. She'll forget me, Anna whispered. 6 is so young. In a few years, she won't remember what I looked like, won't remember my voice, Won't remember that I came back and loved her. She won't forget. I won't let her forget. The videos, the letters, the photos, I'll make sure she knows you loved her, knows you came home. Promise me. I promise. Emma will know her mother loved her. Always. Scott watched his ex-wife love their daughter with the fierce desperation of someone running out of time. Watched her push through pain that would have hospitalized most people just to be at the bus stop. Watched her treasure every mundane moment, loading the dishwasher together, folding laundry, watching cartoons, like each one was precious because it was. Watched her give their daughter the kind of love that was both beautiful and heartbreaking because it came with an expiration date stamped clearly on it. And somewhere in those months of living together, somewhere between the chemo appointments and school pickups and bedtime stories, Scott found forgiveness. Not because Anna deserved it. Not because what she'd done was okay, but because holding on to anger took energy he'd rather spend on living, on helping Anna and Emma make the most of the time they had left. 5 months after that Christmas Eve when Emma said, "Daddy, she's crying," Anna died in her sleep. It was a Tuesday morning in late May. Spring had fully arrived, flowers blooming, birds singing, the kind of beautiful morning that felt wrong for death. Anna had been getting weaker. The cancer was winning and everyone knew it. She'd stopped being able to go to the bus stop 2 weeks earlier, stopped being able to make dinner a week after that, spent most of her time in bed, sleeping more and more, but she'd insisted on staying in the house, in the guest room that had become hers, surrounded by photos of Emma that covered every surface. Scott had set up a baby monitor so he could hear if she needed help during the night. That Tuesday morning, he woke up and realized the monitor had been silent for hours. Usually he heard Anna coughing, moving around, calling out when the pain got bad. But this morning, silence. He'd found her lying peacefully in bed, eyes closed, the pain finally gone from her face. She looked younger than she had in months, almost like the woman he'd married all those years ago. Scott had sat on the edge of her bed and cried, for the woman he'd loved, for the mother Emma had just found and was about to lose, for the 5 months they'd had together that weren't nearly enough, for all of it. Then he'd called the hospice nurse they'd been working with, made the arrangements, and gone to wake Emma up for school. "Mommy died last night, baby," he'd said, holding his 6-year-old daughter on his lap. "She's not hurting anymore. She's at peace." Emma had cried like her heart was breaking, had asked why, asked if it was her fault, asked if Mommy was really gone. Scott had held her and answered every question as honestly as he could, and let her cry until there were no tears left. They'd held a small funeral. Just Scott, Emma, a few of Scott's friends from the fire station, and Anna's sister Christine, who came from out of state, crying and apologizing for not being there sooner. They buried Anna in the local cemetery under a tree that would shade her grave in summer. Emma had drawn a picture to put in the casket, Anna reading to Emma in bed, both of them smiling. It had broken Scott's heart. Emma grieved hard those first months, would cry at random times, would wake up from nightmares, would forget and set a place at the table for Mommy before remembering. Scott grieved too in quieter ways, missing the partnership they'd built, missing watching Anna with Emma, missing the second chance they'd had. But Emma also had memories, real ones, not photos in a box or stories Scott told her, actual lived moments with her mother. 5 months of living together, of bedtime stories read in Anna's voice, not Scott's, of school pickups where Mommy was waiting at the bus stop, of homework help at the kitchen table, of weekend park trips where Anna pushed her on swings, of baking cookies and painting nails and braiding hair, of being loved fiercely and intentionally by a mother who knew every minute was precious, who made each moment count, who showed up every single day despite being sick, who chose Emma over and over again for 5 beautiful, heartbreaking, irreplaceable months, the woman who'd left her and then come back, who'd been broken and made terrible mistakes and was deeply, fundamentally flawed in ways that couldn't be fixed, who'd also loved Emma enough to come home even knowing it meant facing judgment and rejection and the possibility that Scott would turn her away, who'd taught Emma through her presence and her absence that people were complicated and imperfect and messy, that sometimes love meant forgiving the unforgivable, that second chances mattered, that coming home took more courage than leaving ever did. 2 years later, on Christmas Eve, Scott and Emma stood in front of Anna's grave in the snow. Emma was 7 now, taller, more grown up, but she still missed her mom. Emma placed flowers on the grave, roses, Anna's favorite, and a drawing she'd made of the 3 of them together, the family they'd been for 5 precious months. "I miss her," Emma said quietly, her breath visible in the cold air. "Me too, baby. But I'm glad she came back. I'm glad I got to know her. I'm glad I said, 'Daddy, she's crying,' that day." Scott pulled his daughter close, this wise child who taught him about compassion when he'd forgotten. "Me too, Em. Me too. Do you think she's watching us? From heaven?" Scott looked up at the grey December sky, snow falling softly. "I think if she is, she's really proud of you. You're an amazing kid. Kind and brave and smart and compassionate, just like her." "I'm like you too, Daddy. The teacher said I'm brave like a firefighter." "Yeah, you're like both of us. The best parts. You got my stubbornness and her heart, her ability to see people who are hurting, her courage to help even when it's hard." "Is that why I said, 'Daddy, she's crying,' that day?" "Yeah, baby. That's exactly why. You saw someone hurting and you couldn't walk away. That's the best thing about you." They stood there as snow began to fall, soft and gentle, the same kind of perfect Christmas snow that had been falling that night 2 years ago, like that Christmas Eve when Emma had looked at a stranger crying on a bench outside a grocery store and said 2 words that changed everything. "Daddy, she's crying." 2 simple words spoken by a 5-year-old child, an observation, a statement of fact that demanded immediate action. Those 2 words had brought their broken family back together against all odds, had given Anna 5 precious months to be the mother she'd always wanted to be, had given Emma irreplaceable memories of the woman who'd brought her into this world. Those words had taught Scott that compassion was stronger than pride, that forgiveness didn't erase the past, but could build a better future. That love, even complicated and painful and imperfect and temporary, was always worth it. That second chances mattered. That people could be broken and still deserving of grace. Emma had been right that day. Nobody should be alone on Christmas. Not crying women on benches wearing threadbare coats. Not dying mothers desperate for one last glimpse of their daughters. Not single fathers carrying the weight of the world on their shoulders while raising a child alone. Scott and Emma walked home through the snow, hand in hand. The same route they'd walked 2 years ago after leaving Anna standing in the grocery store parking lot, past the same storefronts with their Christmas lights, past the same Salvation Army bell ringers, past the bench where Anna had been sitting that night. Their family was smaller now, different than it had been 2 years ago, scarred by loss and absence and death and all the things they'd never get back. The wedding photos Scott had put back up on the walls showed a younger Anna, healthy and smiling. The videos on his phone showed her reading to Emma, her voice already weakened by illness but full of love. But their family was whole in a way it hadn't been before, complete not in spite of the loss but because of it, because they'd had those 5 months, because Anna had come home, because Emma had insisted on helping a crying stranger, because Scott had chosen compassion over anger. And that was enough, more than enough. It was everything. Because sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is the chance to make things right, even if it's only for a little while, even if it hurts, even if you know from the beginning how it's going to end, even if it ends with goodbye and a grave under a tree. Anna had gotten her chance. 5 months to be a mother, to tuck Emma in at night, to hear Emma call her mommy, to make up for 3 years of absence in whatever small ways she could, to die knowing her daughter was loved and happy and would remember her with affection instead of anger. Emma had gotten her mother, not the one she'd imagined in some fairy tale version, but a real one, flawed and broken and sick, who made mistakes and left and came back, who loved her fiercely for as long as she was able, who taught her that people were complicated and forgiveness was possible and compassion mattered more than anything. Scott had gotten closure, the answers to 3 years of questions, understanding why Anna had left, the ability to forgive her, the chance to help her, the opportunity to show Emma what unconditional love looked like, peace with the past, hope for the future, all because a 5-year-old girl had seen someone crying and insisted on helping, had refused to walk past suffering because that's not what you did when someone needed you, had looked at her father and said 2 words that contained more wisdom than Scott had accumulated in 35 years. "Daddy, she's crying." 2 words, 6 syllables, a lifetime of difference. As they reached their house, the same green house on Maple Street where Anna had spent her last months, Emma looked up at Scott. "Daddy, when I grow up, I want to help people like Mommy helped people, like you help people as a firefighter." Scott's throat tightened. "What do you mean, baby?" "I want to help people who are sad, people who are alone, people who need someone to see them crying and care." Emma looked serious, determined. "Because that's what matters, right? Seeing people who need help and not walking away?" Scott knelt down in the snow, pulling his daughter into a hug. 7 years old and already wiser than most adults would ever be, already understanding the lesson Anna's return and death had taught them both. "That's exactly what matters, Em. You're going to change the world someday." Did Mommy change the world? Scott thought about Anna crying on that bench, about Emma's insistence on helping, about 5 months of borrowed time that had healed more wounds than years of therapy ever could. Yeah, baby, she did. She changed our world, and that counts just as much. They went inside together, shaking snow from their coats, made hot chocolate the way Anna had taught Emma, sat by the Christmas tree talking about memories, about the woman who'd left and come back, about forgiveness and second chances and the power of seeing someone crying and refusing to look away. Outside, the snow continued to fall, silent, gentle, covering the world in white, covering Anna's grave a few miles away, covering the bench where Emma had noticed a stranger's tears. And somewhere in that peaceful Christmas Eve snow, Scott felt something he hadn't felt in 2 years. Not happiness exactly, not the absence of grief, but something like peace, like gratitude, like the knowledge that despite everything, the abandonment, the illness, the death, the loss, they'd been given a gift. 5 months, 150 days, borrowed time that had changed everything. All because Emma had looked at a crying woman and seen someone who needed help. All because Scott had listened to his daughter and chosen compassion over pride. All because Anna had been brave enough to come home, even knowing she was dying. All because sometimes the hardest thing and the right thing are the same thing. And all because 2 simple words contained the wisdom of the universe. "Daddy, she's crying." Scott would never forget those words, never forget that moment, never forget the choice he'd made to invite Anna to dinner, never forget the 5 months that followed, never forget Anna's last peaceful sleep, never forget Emma's grief and healing. And he would teach Emma, as she grew up, that those 2 words were more than an observation. They were a call to action, a reminder that compassion mattered, that seeing suffering and choosing to help was what made us human, that forgiveness was possible, that love could survive anything, that second chances were precious, that every moment mattered. 2 words that had saved their family, healed old wounds, given a dying woman peace, given a little girl her mother, given a broken man redemption. "Daddy, she's crying." The most important thing anyone had ever said to Scott Mitchell, the words that had changed everything, the words he hoped Emma would carry with her for the rest of her life, because in the end, that's all any of us can do, see someone crying and choose to care.